Warning disclaimer: this story is a fictional creation inspired by legends, fashion history, and supernatural themes. It is not intended to defame, misrepresent, or disrespect the legacy of Gabrielle, Coco, Chanel, or any real individuals or brands. The names, locations, and events depicted are purely imaginative and meant for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events is entirely coincidental. Lily Emerson had always known that Paris was more than just the city of lights, it was the city of dreams. Since childhood, she had adored fashion and, above all, idolized the legendary Coco Chanel. While other girls pasted boy band posters on their walls, Lily had vintage Chanel ads taped above her bed and pages torn from fashion magazines showing elegant black dresses, strings of pearls, and the bold CC logo. Her dream was simple: walk the same streets as Chanel, breathe the same air, and design clothes that echoed the timeless elegance of the icon herself. Now, at 22, Lily had arrived in Paris for a semester abroad at the esteemed École de la Mode. She was one of 5 international students selected to study under renowned Parisian designers. The day she landed, the air already felt different, charged with possibility, heavy with the scent of rain and something more vintage, something older. Her first few days were a blur of lectures, ateliers, wine-stained sketchbooks, and croissants. But no class, no textbook, no professor excited her more than the idea of visiting the original Chanel boutique at 31 Rue Cambon, the very site where Coco built her empire. She made the pilgrimage on a gray Thursday afternoon. The boutique stood modest yet powerful, nestled among more modern storefronts. Its cream-colored walls and iconic display windows drew her in like a magnet. Stepping through the threshold felt like crossing into another world. The scent of expensive perfume hung in the air, along with the soft rustle of silk and the click of designer heels on polished floors. Lily wandered silently, reverently, taking it all in: the collections, the mannequins, the perfectly arranged jewelry. And then her eyes lifted to the famous mirrored staircase. The one Chanel herself had designed so she could observe fashion shows from above, unseen. It gleamed even in the dim lighting, a spiraling piece of history. As she stared at her own reflection multiplied across the panes, she suddenly felt her chest tighten. A chill swept over her, crawling up her arms. She blinked. Had someone just passed behind her? She spun around. Nothing. Only a pair of silent mannequins and a distant employee folding scarves. Lily exhaled, brushing it off as jet lag or nerves. But that heavy feeling of being watched didn't fade. It clung to her as she wandered to the fragrance section, where bottles of Chanel No. 5 glimmered under glass. She closed her eyes and leaned in to inhale the legendary scent. But what reached her nose wasn't just perfume, it was a strange blend of jasmine, musk, and something oddly metallic, almost like old coins and wilted roses. Just then, a soft voice behind her said, "She's still here, you know." Lily turned sharply to see an elegant older woman in a black coat and silk gloves. Her name tag read Claudine. Her face was kind but unreadable. "Excuse me?" Lily asked, startled. Claudine smiled gently. "Mademoiselle Chanel." Her spirit never left this place. Some say she still watches over her staircase. That mirror sees more than just reflections. Lily laughed nervously. "That's creepy. And kind of amazing." Claudine nodded. "If you're truly a lover of her work, maybe you'd like to see where she lived. Her private apartment is just upstairs." Lily's heart skipped. She had read about it, how Chanel never actually slept there, but decorated it with symbols and superstitions, crystal chandeliers, lion statues, and lucky talismans. "That would be incredible," she whispered. Claudine gave a quiet nod and checked her watch. "Come tomorrow. Around sunset. I'll be here." As she left the boutique that day, Lily was both thrilled and shaken. The air outside felt colder than when she arrived. She looked over her shoulder at the boutique, catching her reflection in the front glass. For a split second, she thought she saw another woman standing behind her, tall, graceful, dressed in black with pearls at her neck. But when she blinked, the figure was gone. The next evening, Lily stood outside 31 Rue Cambon, clutching her sketchbook like a lifeline. The streets of Paris shimmered under a warm golden hue as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows between the buildings. She couldn't believe she was about to step into Coco Chanel's legendary private apartment, a sacred, rarely seen part of fashion history. Her heartbeat so loud it echoed in her ears, nearly drowning out the hum of passing traffic and the clink of café cutlery nearby. Claudine appeared from inside the boutique exactly as promised, dressed just as elegantly as before. Her expression was neutral but somehow welcoming, like a strict teacher who secretly enjoyed seeing a student eager to learn. "You came," Claudine said simply, unlocking the side entrance next to the boutique. "Most people say yes, but then change their minds." Lily raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Claudine gave a small, mysterious smile. "Some say the apartment doesn't like visitors." Before Lily could ask what that meant, the door creaked open and swallowed them into darkness. Inside, they climbed a narrow stairway lit only by a dim brass sconce. The air grew noticeably cooler with each step, the smell changing from perfume and polish to something older, aged wood, velvet, and dust. At the top of the staircase, Claudine pushed open an ornate door and stepped aside. "Welcome to Mademoiselle Chanel's sanctuary." Lily stepped in, breath catching in her throat. It was like walking into a dream frozen in time. The apartment was lavish but deeply personal. Plush beige sofas, lacquered coromandel screens, crystal chandeliers, and countless talismans adorned the space. Lions, Chanel's astrological symbol, were carved into furniture and painted on glass. There were books everywhere, open mid-page, and a faint scent of number 5 still lingered in the air, as though she had just stepped out. "It's untouched," Lily whispered, tracing her fingers along a carved lion on the edge of the table. Claudine nodded. She believed in energy. Superstition. She surrounded herself with lucky objects, mirrors, symbols. Some say that's what tied her spirit here. As Lily wandered, her fingers lightly brushing antique books and marble sculptures, she felt a pressure build in the room, not unpleasant, but heavy, like the sensation right before a thunderstorm. Her gaze settled on the massive mirrored wall at the far end. As she walked closer, she paused. For a second, she saw herself and another figure, tall and upright, wearing black. But when she turned around, there was no one there. I think I saw something," Lily said, trying to sound calm. Claudine's voice came from behind her, steady but low. "You are not the first to say that. She shows herself only to those she considers worthy." "Worthy?" Lily echoed. "She was a woman of vision and control," Claudine explained. "Even in death, she chooses who may enter her world." A silence fell between them. Lily wasn't sure if she felt honored or frightened. The mirrors around the room shimmered in the dim light, catching fragments of movement that didn't seem to belong to either of them. Claudine walked over to an old lacquered cabinet and opened it, revealing a series of delicate glass perfume bottles. On it, in careful handwriting, were the words, "Style never dies." "Neither do I." And at the bottom, instead of a signature, were 2 interlocking CS. Lily's hand trembled slightly. She looked around her room. Nothing was different, but something felt different. A slight draft blew through even though the windows were shut tight. Her mirror across the room caught her reflection, and for just a breath, she thought she saw a second figure standing behind her, smiling. But when she blinked, it was gone. Over the next few days, something shifted in Lily's world. The strange part wasn't just that they were whispers, it was that they came from her mirrors. At first, she dismissed them as stress-induced. The semester had picked up speed, and her professors expected daily sketches and fabric studies. But the whispers didn't feel like fatigue. They didn't come from within her mind, they came from outside, from the reflective surfaces in her room. She would be brushing her teeth and hear a soft voice behind her, too low to understand. She'd whip around, foam still in her mouth, but no one would be there. That's when she saw it. At first, she thought it was her own reflection, just delayed by a second. But then the reflection smiled before she did. Not a soft smile, but a knowing one. Elegant. Controlled. Familiar. It was Coco's smile from old photographs, sharp and dignified, as if she were amused by something only she understood. Lily jumped to her feet and knocked the mirror over in a panic. It crashed to the wooden floor, splintering at the edges but not shattering entirely. The smile was gone. That night, she dreamed again. In her dream, she stood at the top of the mirrored staircase inside Rue Cambon. But the boutique below was empty, dark, and echoing. She looked around and saw herself reflected over and over again from different angles. And standing at the bottom of the stairs was Coco Chanel, watching her with those piercing eyes. She wasn't a rotting corpse or a monstrous specter. She looked as she had in her prime, tailored, graceful, and unblinking. Coco raised her hand and beckoned Lily downward. Her lips didn't move, but Lily heard her voice inside her head. I chose you. You belong to the house now. Lily jolted awake, covered in sweat. Her room smelled strongly of jasmine and powder, and her sketchbook was no longer on the floor. It was on her desk, opened to a new page. The sketch wasn't hers. It was an illustration of a 1920s dress, one she had never drawn before, with Chanel's signature. Her fingers trembled as she touched the page. Over the next few days, it continued. Every time she'd sketch something new, the drawings would subtly change overnight. Hemlines shifted, buttons appeared, silhouettes transformed into vintage Chanel patterns. Once, her professor commented, "These look hauntingly timeless. You've captured something, almost spiritual." Lily didn't know whether to feel flattered or frightened. Even the mirrors at school began to feel strange. "You've changed," she said one morning over coffee. "You walk different. Talk different. Sometimes. I swear, your voice even has an accent." Lily didn't reply. Because deep down, she already knew. The ghost of Coco Chanel wasn't just haunting her. She was beginning to possess her. Despite everything that was happening, the sketches changing overnight, the whispers in the mirrors, the dream visitations, Lily couldn't stay away from 31 Rue Cambon. Something about the place pulled her in, like an invisible thread tugging at her chest. She told herself it was for research, for inspiration. But in truth, it was more than that. Lily approached the front desk, looking for Claudine, the mysterious woman who had first taken her to the private apartment. But the girl at the counter blinked at her in confusion. But the face was obscured in shadow, as if the mirrors refused to reflect it. The figure didn't move, didn't wave. It just stood there, watching her, head tilted ever so slightly in amusement. Lily blinked. The figure was gone. Panic flooded her chest. She turned and hurried toward the staircase, weaving past displays and customers. But a security guard stepped in front of her, blocking the way. "I'm sorry, mademoiselle. That area is off limits." "I've been there before," she insisted. "Claudine brought me." "I just want to." "There is no Claudine," the guard said more firmly. "Please return to the main floor." Lily backed away, her hands trembling. She left the boutique quickly, her heart pounding in her ears. But as she stepped outside onto the sidewalk, something caught her attention. A small envelope had been slipped into the pocket of her coat. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside, written in the same elegant handwriting, were the words, "Style never dies." "Neither do I." No address. No sender. No signature. Lily's eyes welled with tears, not of sadness, but of fear. She was being watched. She had always romanticized Coco Chanel, worshipped her as an icon. But now, that admiration had morphed into something else, something obsessive, mutual, and maybe even dangerous. That night, Lily locked all the mirrors in her apartment inside a storage closet. She couldn't stand looking into them anymore. Every time she did, something was different. One time, her reflection blinked a second too late. Another time, her hand in the mirror wore a bracelet she didn't own. Even her voice began to shift. She caught herself speaking to Rachel in clipped, almost French-accented English. Her posture had improved. She sat straighter. She began wearing all black without realizing it, accessorizing with vintage pearls. One day she looked down at her outfit and gasped. She looked exactly like Coco in an old photo. Rachel was growing concerned. "Lily, you're scaring me," she said one night. "You're acting like someone else." I feel more like myself than ever, Lily replied quietly, not sure if she believed it. That night, she had another dream, only this time, it wasn't in black and white. It was vivid and golden, set in the boutique during its heyday. Women in feathered hats and beaded dresses floated through the rooms. At the center stood Coco Chanel, ageless and regal. She turned to Lily and said, "The house must live on." "And so must I." Lily woke up gasping. Her phone buzzed beside her. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're ready. Come back upstairs." She dropped the phone. That same faint scent of Chanel No. 5 filled the air once more. She wasn't just being haunted now. She was being summoned. The following week, everything in Lily's life began to blur between dream and reality. Her work at the École de la Mode became her only tether to normalcy, but even there, the haunting followed her. The school's atelier, once a haven of creativity and collaboration, turned cold and oppressive. It wasn't the physical temperature that chilled her, it was something deeper. A presence. Watching. Waiting. At first, the signs were small. She'd leave her sewing machine for just a moment and return to find that a seam had already been stitched flawlessly, in a style she hadn't intended. Or a mannequin that she was dressing would be turned ever so slightly, its pose now more refined, more Chanel. One morning, Lily arrived early to get a head start on a dress she'd been struggling with. She flicked on the light and stopped dead in her tracks. Her unfinished dress was no longer unfinished. It was complete, hanging on the mannequin like it had been fitted by a couture legend. Perfect pleats. Elegant neckline. Buttons shaped like camellia flowers, the flower Coco Chanel adored. The fabric shimmered under the atelier lights, now trimmed with a delicate black ribbon she hadn't added. Lily stepped forward slowly, her breath shallow. Her hands hovered over the fabric, almost afraid to touch it. Then she noticed the tag pinned to the collar. Ellie, her initials. But the handwriting wasn't hers. Lily glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see anyone, standing behind her. But she was alone. Or so she thought. A soft rustling sound came from across the room. She turned quickly toward the work table. The sewing machine closest to the window began to whir on its own. The wheel spun. The needle danced. Thread unspooled. No one sat at the chair. Lily stumbled back, her eyes wide. The machine moved like invisible hands were working it with precision and grace. She should have screamed. She should have run. But instead, she stood frozen in awe and terror as a piece of black satin was pulled through the machine, forming the beginning of what looked like another Chanel-inspired dress. The lights flickered. And then she saw it, reflected in the atelier's glass display case. A woman. Not just a shadow. Not a trick of the light. She was tall, poised, and unmistakably Coco Chanel, at least, the ghostly version of her. The figure moved behind Lily, examining her work with a critical eye. Her face was emotionless, her hands folded neatly in front of her. No footsteps. No sound. Just presence. Lily turned, but the figure vanished. Only the scent of powder and jasmine remained, thick in the air like fog. When the other students arrived later that morning, Lily kept silent. She didn't mention the haunted machine or the finished dress. But her mind raced. What did Chanel want from her? Why her? The answer began to reveal itself later that afternoon. Her professor, Madame Fournier, walked through the room examining student projects. She stopped in front of Lily's mannequin and stared at the dress for a long moment. "This," she said, tracing a finger along the neckline. "This is exceptional. Trace magnifique." "Did you do this alone?" Lily hesitated. One reflection smiled when she didn't. It mouthed the words, "soon." Lily ran to her closet and covered the mirrors again, breathing hard. Her sketchbook sat open on the desk. New designs had appeared on the pages, elegant, bold, vintage couture. All signed C. She couldn't escape it anymore. The atelier, the boutique, the sketch, every mirror still shimmered with movement when she passed. Her sketches now came to life on their own. The ghost of Coco Chanel wasn't just observing her, she was merging with her. And Lily needed answers. She began to dig. During lunch breaks and after classes, she scoured Parisian archives, university libraries, and dusty secondhand bookstores. She searched not just for biography, she filled it with symbols. Mirrors to trap energy. Lions for strength. Quartz crystals hidden in the walls. She said the fashion must not die with her. That she would find a way back. That line echoed in Lily's mind. She would find a way back. Further digging led her to a rarely accessed collection of private journals written by a retired Chanel atelier worker named Marceline Giroux, preserved in a small fashion museum in the 11th arrondissement. With special permission and a lot of persuasion, Lily was granted access to Marceline's journals. What she found turned her blood cold. One entry, dated 1974, 3 years after Coco Chanel's death, read, "A new girl joined our team this season. Young. American." The others are starting to whisper. It's happening again. She is choosing. Lily read the entry 3 times over. It wasn't just her. There had been others. Other women, young and ambitious, drawn to the Chanel legacy like moths to flame. Each chosen. Each touched by something beyond reason. Possession disguised as inspiration. More entries revealed a chilling pattern. Every 10 years or so, a promising student or designer would arrive in Paris, become immersed in Chanel's legacy, and begin exhibiting strange behaviors, wearing the same perfume, speaking French fluently despite never learning it, sketching vintage designs without explanation. One girl reportedly disappeared in 1984. Another returned to New York and was later institutionalized. Her family said she believed she was Coco Chanel. Lily sat in the archive room, the journal in her lap, trembling. The final page was marked with a scrawled note from Marceline, written in shaky pen. It's not just a haunting. It's a ritual. She feeds on legacy. She lives through them. They're not successors. They're vessels. The word vessels burned itself into Lily's thoughts. Was she becoming one? Back in her apartment that night, Lily placed the journal beside her bed like a shield. Her sketchbook lay open on her desk. She hadn't touched it since reading the journal, but it had new pages. Dresses from a time she didn't know. Each one signed with AC, so delicately drawn it looked like it had been etched by Chanel herself. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Her laptop powered down. The room grew cold. The closet door, where she had hidden the mirrors, creaked open on its own. Lily's breath caught in her throat as she stood up and slowly approached. Inside, her covered mirrors now lay bare. Exposed. Glinting with an unnatural light. And in each reflection, she saw herself, but older, bolder, lips painted red, posture perfect, eyes cold and calculating. A woman of control. A legend reborn. One reflection leaned forward and whispered from within the glass, "The world forgot me. You will remind them." Lily stumbled back, heart racing. It wasn't possession. It was rebirth. And Coco Chanel had chosen her, just like she had chosen others, for something far more permanent than influence. Lily was no longer inspired by Chanel. She was becoming her. Lily stood at the edge of herself, mind fraying, soul splintering. The line between her and Coco Chanel had thinned to a whisper, like silk stretched too far. She no longer trusted her reflection, her sketches, or her voice. Everything had become suspect. But one thing was clear, she had to end this or risk losing herself entirely. It wasn't easy to decide where to begin. The boutique was off limits, and Claudine, whoever or whatever she truly was, had vanished without a trace. But Lily knew that the answer, the true source of this possession, lay in Chanel's private apartment. The one place where the veil had first lifted. She had to return. Not as a guest this time, but as a trespasser. A challenger. Under cover of night, she returned to Rue Cambon, dressed in black, like Chanel herself. The street was quiet, the boutique dark. She waited until the last pedestrian passed, then slipped around the back through the alleyway. She'd memorized the side door from her first visit. Strangely, it was unlocked, as if the house had been expecting her. The interior was deathly silent, cloaked in velvet shadows. Lily ascended the staircase, each step creaking louder than the last. The mirrors along the stairs shimmered, but she didn't look into them. Not yet. At the top, The ornate door stood slightly ajar. She pushed it open. The apartment was exactly as she remembered, frozen in time. But now it breathed. The air was dense, pulsing with unseen energy. The scent of Chanel No. 5 was overwhelming. Every talisman, the lions, the crystals, the mirrors seemed alive, charged with something ancient and powerful. Lily stepped forward slowly. The moment her feet touched the center of the room, the door slammed shut behind her. The chandeliers flickered to life with a low electric hum. Shadows twisted along the walls. And then, from every mirror, she emerged, the ghost of Coco Chanel. Not just one, but many. Reflections of the designer at different ages, different moods. Her expressions ranged from amusement to stern judgment. They surrounded Lily in a ring of glass and memory. "You came back," a voice said, calm, elegant, and cold. It didn't come from the mirrors. It came from within the room. Lily turned slowly. Standing at the foot of the famous mirrored staircase was Coco herself. Not a spirit, not a shadow. A full apparition, as real as the walls around her. She wore black, of course, with a brooch at her collar and a cigarette holder in her hand, unlit. Her eyes sparkled, not with kindness, but with recognition. "I've waited," Chanel said, taking a step forward. "Many come through here. You're the first in years to carry me so well." Lily stood her ground. "You're using me. Taking me over." "Of course," Chanel replied, as if it were obvious. "Style is eternal. But the body," she gestured to herself. "The body fades. The house must go on. I must go on." "I'm not your vessel," Lily said, voice shaking. "Then why do you dream my dreams? Sketch my lines? Speak in my tongue?" Chanel asked, tilting her head. "You knew, deep down. You came to Paris not for study, but for purpose. To be more." "No," Lily whispered. "To be me." The mirrors around the room pulsed violently, the glass rippling like disturbed water. Chanel's reflection shattered in one pane, then reformed in another. "I chose you. You are mine." "No," Lily said louder. "I choose myself." She reached into her bag and pulled out Marceline Giroux's journal, now filled with the documented stories of all the women before her, women taken, changed, or destroyed by Chanel's spirit. She opened it to the final page and read aloud the warning: "Break the glass. Break the mirror. Shatter the legend, and you free the soul." Lily grabbed the nearest lion-shaped paperweight and turned toward the largest mirror, the one that had first shown her Chanel's smile. The apparition screamed. "No!" But Lily didn't hesitate. She hurled the weight into the mirror with all her strength. Glass exploded, slicing through air like sharp confetti. The lights blew out. The room erupted in wind, in sound, in the echo of 100 sewing machines and perfume bottles crashing to the floor. Lily fell to her knees, covering her face. Then silence. When she looked up, the apartment was still. The mirrors were cracked, their light gone. The scent had vanished. Chanel's ghost was nowhere to be seen. Only Lily remained, her own reflection staring back from every fractured shard. A week had passed since the confrontation in Coco Chanel's apartment, and Lily still couldn't quite grasp what had happened. The physical bruises from shattered glass had healed, but the emotional scars lingered like whispers in the corners of her mind. She had walked out of Rue Cambon that night dazed and alone. No security guards had stopped her, no police had been called. It was as if the world had chosen to forget or pretend nothing had occurred. But Lily remembered everything. Back at her modest Paris flat, she burned Marceline Giroux's journal, its secrets, warnings, and tragic entries reduced to ash in her fireplace. She didn't want anyone else to stumble into that same shadow. The story ended with her. Or so she hoped. The next morning, she received a message. It was an envelope. No return address. Just her name in handwriting that bore an eerie resemblance to her own. Inside was a single note, written in crisp, elegant script. "Style never dies. It only changes hands." Below it, a sketch. A dress design. Simple. Iconic. Unmistakably Chanel. Lily's hands trembled. She didn't sketch it. Not knowingly. But the lines, they were hers too. Something had changed in her. The ghost was gone, yes. But the influence, the aesthetic, the intuition, the eye remained embedded in her soul. She didn't tell anyone what had really happened. Her professors at the Design Institute noticed a dramatic evolution in her work. Her pieces were bolder, refined, elegant. Her stitching was flawless. She no longer hesitated with fabrics or questioned her color palettes. It was as if someone inside her knew what to do, even before her fingers moved. Her designs gained attention. She was invited to intern with several Paris fashion houses. But she declined most. She wanted something different. Something smaller. Controlled. Authentic. Hers. And yet, some nights, when the air was still and the moonlight crept across her floor, Lily swore she could hear the distant clicking of a sewing machine or catch the faint scent of Chanel No. 5 drifting from her closet. She told herself it was imagination. Residue. Nothing more. Until one night, while examining a new sketch she didn't remember drawing, she noticed something strange in the mirror across the room. A shadow fleeting. A figure watching. She turned quickly. No one there. But her reflection was smiling. And it wasn't her smile. That was the moment she knew the truth. The ghost hadn't been banished. Only buried. Tamed. Reined in like silk in a seam. Coco Chanel had merely adjusted the hemline of her haunting. Now Lily walked the narrow line between legacy and curse. The world saw a rising star. A prodigy. A rebirth of Parisian fashion. But inside, she lived with the constant question, was her talent truly hers, or was she just the latest canvas for Coco Chanel's eternal design? She considered leaving Paris. Moving back to the US, away from the mirrors and memories. But a part of her couldn't. Chanel was Paris. And now, so was she. The boutique at Rue Cambon reopened, of course. New designers, new collections. But Lily never returned. She would walk past the building, glance at the windows, and feel the weight of unseen eyes. The lion statues still stood guard. The mirrored staircase remained pristine. But for Lily, it was no longer a place of aspiration, it was a temple of ghosts. Still, the question remained, should she resist the influence or embrace it? Was this possession or partnership? As her career blossomed, journalists began to ask questions. Who inspires you? They'd ask. And Lily would always smile politely and say, I find inspiration in the classics. But I follow my own thread. In truth, the thread she followed had begun long before she was born. Woven through time, through legends, through a woman who refused to die. A woman who once said, in order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different. And now, that difference lived on. In the fabric. In the fragrance. In the mirror. Lily didn't know if she had broken the curse, or merely become part of it. But as she stood before her newest design, mannequin clothed in timeless black, she realized something haunting and beautiful. Some stories never die. They just change form. Just like fashion. 74.